Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Fig Tree podcast. My name is Kurt Olson. I'm your host. I'm coming to you on the late morning of June 11, 2025. And people will be seeing a tariffs agreement between China and the United States in the news today. Trump has already gone on social media declaring victory. Surprise, surprise. An interesting element to what's happening here is it will allow Chinese students to continue to be educated in the United States. Um, an interesting aspect that is an indicator that this was a big deal to Xi Jinping. At which point, American officials should be asking, well, why is it such a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because a lot of their students are don't know what percentage, but there's a certain group of students on American college campuses from China that are they're agents of the state. They're agents of the Chinese Communist Party. Um, it sounds like that will continue under this tariff agreement. Um, A second thing involving foreign countries that I want to bring to your attention is something that happened last Wednesday evening. And there was a travel ban announced um, with full restrictions on a dozen countries and then partial restrictions on another group. The fully restricted countries are Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen. And the partially restricted countries are Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, Venezuela. This announcement a week ago was a response to the events in Boulder, Colorado, where the guy ended up throwing a couple of Molotov cocktails and into a crowd of people who uh, were either Jews or people along with some Jews who were agreeing that the hostages in Gaza need to be released. Um, I don't like this kind of posture from our country. Trump did it because he doesn't want bad guys coming into our country. I get that. The problem with that is this: there are people in these countries who could very easily be wanting to flee those countries because of the persecution they are experiencing there. And America should be the first place they should want to come to. Um, that happened last week. I'm going to kind of leave it there, but I know why Trump does this kind of thing, but in the process, I believe he is harming persecuted Christians in those countries that want to potentially flee to the United States and take up home here. Um, Moving on. A couple of years ago, and I have written this in some of my columns that have pertained to this topic, or things related to it, and I've included it in the details that I wrote. Um, it involves Catholics who want Latin Mass. So there was someone in the Richmond field office of the FBI just a couple of years ago. This would have been 22, maybe 23, where someone from the Richmond field office just up and started writing that these people were concerned. And when Chris Ray was questioned about it at times before the House or the Senate, he would quickly disqualify it as legitimate. And coming to find out now through a story in the Washington Times on June 3rd that there's a whole lot more to this than what Chris Ray was ever communicating to the Congress. Again, this is the Washington Times. The Biden era FBI concealed the extent of its anti Catholic operation, which then FBI Director Christopher Wray told Congress was limited to a single 2023 memo, newly revealed Bureau documents show. The FBI files were obtained by Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Charles Grassley and shared first with the Washington Times. The files show that the agency was engaging in a bureau wide investigation of radical traditional Catholics. But Mr. Ray and other top officials characterized it as a one off memo. The FBI declined to comment. Mr. Grassley presented his findings to FBI Director Kash Patel in a letter Monday. This would have been June 3rd. The Iowa Republican expressed his concern about the FBI's handling and dissemination of an anti Catholic memo under Mr. Ray and the agency's lack of transparency and responsiveness to congressional inquiries about the matter. Surprise, surprise. Wow. The FBI unresponsive and lacking transparency. That's kind of like standard operating procedure. That's like the cost of doing business for these folks. The investigation first came to light in February 2023 when former FBI agent turned whistleblower Kyle Seraphin published a memo created by the Bureau's office in Richmond, Virginia. The memo was an alert that radical traditionalist Catholics adhere to an anti Semite, anti immigrant, anti LGBTQ, and white supremacist ideology, and said these Catholics were prone to extremist ideological beliefs and violent rhetoric. However, the memo's reach was much broader than what FBI officials disclosed. The new documents reveal this memo that was originally produced in Richmond in January 2023 was distributed on February 2nd to more than 1,000 FBI employees nationwide. That's just a little bit of a taste of that, and just goes to show how repeatedly, once again, we are lied to. The Congress is lied to. And every time it seems that when the Congress is lied to, they don't care. They don't care. No perjury charges come forth, nothing. And but an important issue because the Richmond field office in Virginia was created this memo and wanted people to be very, very concerned about these traditionalist Catholics and their supposed um, political leanings in a variety of ways. The last things here I'm going to share with you all involve the situation involving immigration enforcement and the events in LA. But I'm going to start in Somerville, South Carolina. A week ago Sunday, this would have been June 1st. No, yes, June 1st. June 1st. In Somerville, South Carolina, which is a suburb of Charleston. 200 federal, state, and local law enforcement officials descended on a nightclub at 3 a.m. in the morning. This place was called, I believe, the Alamo. A poor name for a nightclub in South Carolina, but needless to say. Um, um, Inside, they find somewhere between 60 and 80 people, and we're talking bad people. There's 200 people inside. Some in there are just there to party and whatever. But this location in Charleston, South Carolina, we come to find out through um, press conference from the state of South Carolina and details from the feds that there are some really bad people that were hanging out at this nightclub. The law enforcement got latched onto them because in the wee hours of the morning, especially on the weekend, they were fielding noise complaints. And the more they got complaints about this one location, the more law enforcement decided to maybe it deserves a little bit more of our attention. And that's what caused them to really dig deep and find out that there are people connected to drug cartels and dangerous gangs that were hanging out here. There were 10 kids, one as young as 13 years old, and one that was regarded as a missing child that were located here. And the people who were busted in this place, again, somewhere between mid 60 some, and I've seen the number as high as 80 in the days following the initial um, raid. And these are bad people. These are people that were engaged in the trafficking of drugs and even human trafficking, and in some cases, minors. That was happening in Somerville, South Carolina. South Carolina isn't that big. And I will share in the description to this podcast a local TV report about that raid. And you can see it for yourself. It runs a couple minutes. Um, so that's the first thing that involves immigration enforcement. And my understanding is these kinds of raids are happening across the country, and very few of them are getting the attention of the mainstream media. It's taking local media to bring it to the attention of people. Um, that's going to bring me to Gavin Newsom. So, and these riots. So, late last week, this would have been Friday and Saturday. We have immigration customs enforcement descend on LA and engage in some immigration enforcement related things. Um, I've seen reports that some of it involved tax evasion, some of the initial activity that was going on, but there have been other things. And, pardon me, and Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who is regarded as perhaps at this point the lead contender to be the Democratic nominee in 2028, um, decides to play the role of the innocent guy who has the mean federal government descending on his state, and it's heavy-handed and it's over the top, and how dare they? Well, in December 2021, get that year, because that was during COVID. Gavin Newsom had armed state agents descend on a Christian preschool because of the crime of not wearing face masks. That happened in California at the hands of Gavin Newsom. So don't let this guy fool you that he's this 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 paragon of virtue, and how dare those mean feds come in my state. This is a guy who during COVID had private dinners, basically told people, I'm going to tell you to do X and I'm going to do Y. And when those kids who are ages, what, 2, 3, 4, weren't wearing face masks at a preschool, state agents from California descended on a Christian preschool in December 2021. So don't let Gavin Newsom give you the impression he's this amazing beacon of virtue, because he's not. He's not. He simply isn't. And like a lot of other governors from blue states that we saw, they said one thing and then did something else. Americans are going to have to decide what kind of a country we want. And we're getting flashbacks back to summer 2020, when multiple cities had Antifa and other groups engaged in Black Lives Matter, all riled up following the death of George Floyd, and um, just chaos, looting of cities, looting of businesses, and this started the defund the police movement that we saw in a lot of blue states. And but not exclusively, because even the city of Austin, Texas, decided to do some of that. So Americans can either have a country where laws matter, law enforcement is going to engage in law enforcement activity to keep bad people from doing bad things, and the rule of law generate some form of civil stability and peace, or we can have what LA is serving up and have rent-a-mobs descend on various locations, disrupt travel, surround federal government or government buildings and other activity, um, destroying vehicles, looting businesses, um, and other violence. And the notion that this is peaceful just doesn't. They're asking you once again to not believe your lying eyes. Just like with the decline of Joe Biden, don't believe your lying eyes when they tell you that everything's peaceful that's going on in LA. And let's be clear, this is going to be moving to other cities. And the FBI is now investigating a variety of groups that they think are linked to organizing and funding these mobs that are descending in these large metropolitan areas. And I'm going to include a link in the description to the podcast of uh, a report on News Nation and I believe it was News Nation. It was either News Nation or the News Desk, one of the two, and it talks about specific groups that are now being targeted by Team Trump too. And we're gonna have to choose what kind of a country we want. We either want peace and stability or chaos. We want neighborhoods that are safe or we want lawlessness and cops not being literally handcuffed and or figuratively handcuffed and not being able to do their job. We have to make a decision because this cannot persist. And this brings me to the final item I'm going to talk about here on this podcast, and it involves Al-Qaida. So yesterday, a video emerges from Al-Qaida in the Arabian Peninsula. And this guy's name is Saad Atef El-Awlaki. He is the leader of Al-Qaida in the Arabian Peninsula. And this guy's calling for the assassination of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, their families, Elon Musk, and anyone connected to Team Trump, as well as attacks on the military and Jews worldwide. About 3-4 weeks ago, there were statements made about attacking Jews. And then we had the murder of that young couple outside the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. And then the following weekend, we had the events in Boulder, Colorado, where Molotov cocktails are thrown and 15 people land in hospitals, and some of them with burns. And this is an escalation of the rhetoric. And this guy also is calling on the 4.5 million Muslims in the United States of America to engage in assassinations of Jews or whoever, because according to him, there are no red lines. When the assassination attempts on Donald Trump unfolded last summer before the election, there was cause for concern. And the safety of one of the candidates running for president. And this rhetoric from the leader of Al-Qaida in the Arabian Peninsula ratchets up the need for prayer for our government officials at a very high level. These people want mayhem. These people want chaos. These people want terror. These people want fear. Kind of like what we're seeing in LA. And this is a moment where anyone who is a follower of Jesus Christ should be lifting up our government leaders on a regular basis. And yes, these people need the wisdom of Solomon to do their jobs. But in the case of the highest levels of our government, the federal government, we're talking about people who now have assassination threats against specific leaders in the government and their families. And this is an escalation, folks. And God forbid, God forbid, there are people that listen to this guy and carry out his wishes. Because if it happens, bad things, bad things, many, many bad things. And I hate to end my podcast on such a sobering note, but the things that are happening here, involving LA, um, I mean, this just takes us back to a time 5 years ago when you had groups of people running downtowns in Portland and Seattle and a variety of other places, and law enforcement couldn't do their jobs. And no one should wonder why people want to flee blue states, because the governors have lost their blithering minds and they're not letting law enforcement do their job. Anyone who is a peace-loving person, playing by the rules, doing their jobs, kids in school, the whole 9 yards, you should care about this stuff. Because this gets to the kind of country we're going to have. This gets to the kind of communities you may have. But I have some things I'm going to link into the description to the podcast that comes with each of these. I'm going to include video out of Summerville, South Carolina, and the raid that was done there involving immigration. I'm going to include video of a broadcast segment on the FBI now investigating groups involved in the uh, riots in LA and elsewhere. And I'm going to include the piece I was just mentioning from the Middle East Media Research Institute, that is the information that came forth yesterday from the Al-Qaida leader in the Arabian Peninsula. So those three things are going to be available in the description to this podcast. And I have a new column dropping this Sunday. I'm just going to say a name: Brandon Lake. Yes, the column is about him. And this podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. For those who are watching, thank you for that. Um, it's only going to spread by word of mouth, and if you like what you're hearing here, please pass it on to others. And until next time, God bless and goodbye.